What's up guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are talking about how I sleep trained my baby at 4 months old. I actually started sleep training him just before he was 4 months, and literally by the time he was 4 months he was completely sleep trained. So I just thought I would share my experience of what I did and what worked well for me in hopes of maybe helping you kind of navigate your own sleep training journey with your baby. Now Henrik is 6 months old and he has still successfully been sleep trained. He still sleeps through the night. He's really good with his naps. We're so happy that we're able to sleep through the night and that he's able to sleep through the night and just be a happier baby throughout the day. It took me a while to film this video because, to be honest, I feel that sometimes there is a lot of opinions that come out when people talk about sleep training, because so many people use different methods when it comes to sleep training, and a lot of people don't agree with some of these methods. So I think the most important thing is that you figure out a method that feels good for you and works for you and your family and your baby. Do whatever you're comfortable with. When I first started kind of figuring out and doing some research about sleep training and what method I was going to follow, I watched so many videos, I downloaded different courses, and then from that research I decided how I was going to move forward, and I never actually ended up following like a specific method. I basically just kind of took all the information that I researched and figured out kind of my own method, and it obviously ended up working out really well for us. I shared with you guys on Instagram that Henrik was sleep trained, and I got tons of requests to film a sleep training video. So I am just here sharing my own personal experiences and what worked well for me. I am by no means saying that this is what you should do. If you choose to follow it, that's fine. But if you have any questions about what we did as a family, I would be happy to answer them. You can just leave those questions down below. So let's go ahead and dive in. I thought I would first talk about some tips, and then I would go ahead and just kind of explain to you the process that we did, and I'll also share with you exactly how our first couple nights went. So in this video I'm going to be speaking specifically on sleep training through the night. I did kind of follow the same sort of routine when it came to his naps, but apparently through the research that I did, napping and sleeping kind of works two different parts of the brain, so you do kind of approach them differently. So I'll touch on naps a little bit. This is more specific to sleeping through the night. So I did write notes on how the first couple nights went, because I knew that by the time came to film this video I would not remember, so I'm gonna kind of go back in those notes in my phone and share with you exactly how it went. Before I dive into the first tip, I do want to say that make sure you don't start sleep training your baby too young. You want to make sure that they are mentally ready to be sleep trained, because they have to be able to soothe themselves. I did read that 16 weeks, some other places said 12 weeks, but majority of places were saying 16 weeks is kind of when you can start sleep training. So we started sleep training just maybe a week prior to that, but I was noticing that Henrik was hitting all of his milestones, so I felt comfortable starting just a little bit early, but please keep that in mind. So the first tip I want to say to you is be consistent for at least 72 hours. I feel like 72 hours gives you a good chunk of time where you can be consistent and you can really just make sure that sleep training is your sole focus. I would highly suggest staying home for those 3 days so that you can make sure your naps are scheduled and they're regulated, because you don't want your baby sleeping in the car seat and then sleeping in the stroller when you're out on a walk. You want to make sure that they are sleeping when they're supposed to be sleeping and they're awake when they're supposed to be awake. So try to choose a time when you can be home for 48 to maybe 72 hours, and hopefully those 3 days of consistency will allow you to see huge progress. And in our case, it definitely did. So although I'm saying be super consistent for the first 72 hours, the first 3 days, I would suggest dedicating a week to the process. Sleep training a baby takes time. They're used to being soothed the way that you were soothing them before. So just give yourself time. If you don't see a ton of progress on the first 2 nights or 3 nights, wait the full week. And if that still doesn't work for you, maybe you can try out a different sleep training method. But I can imagine that some babies just need a little bit more time. Tip number 2 is make sure the room is dark. So whatever room your crib is in, I would highly suggest getting some blackout blinds. We got blackout blinds even before Henrik was born, and I they make such a big difference. Not so much at night, just because obviously it's dark out at night, even though actually, yeah, at night it does still help him, because when he goes to bed, usually around 7, it's still quite light out in the summer months, so it definitely helps in the nights, but it absolutely helps during his naps. It also just makes a huge difference when you prepare the room and like your baby is ready for sleep. I noticed that when we are out and about and Henrik is sleeping like in a different place, he never sleeps as long. He always wakes up a lot sooner than I anticipate, and I think part of it has to do with the brightness in the room, just because he's used to sleeping in a pitch black room. But same as me, like I sleep way better when it's completely black versus daylight. So tip number 3 is make sure you have a white noise machine. We started using a white noise machine since day one. I was watching some YouTube videos on just like mom tips and stuff like that, and so many people suggested a white noise machine, and we started using it and have never looked back. We use it for every single nap, every single night. It's nice because we can continue to live our lives and not have to worry about the baby being woken up. If the dog's barking, if we have some friends over, if we're playing music, if we're cooking dinner, we're not waking up Henrik. So it's nice to know that the white noise is there and it's not going to wake him up, but it also allows like Henrik to know that once the white noise machine goes on, it's time for sleep. So we bring a white noise machine with us everywhere we go. I don't have his portable one here. I think it's called Hush something. I'll link it down in the description box below. I just got it off Amazon, and we bring it with us everywhere because I had originally bought a white noise machine and it turned off after half an hour, and when it would turn off, it would wake him up. So I purchased another one, and this one doesn't turn off. It stays on until the battery dies, and it's so much better. So we use that one when we're on the go. I just carry it with me in my diaper bag, and then I just charge it when I think it needs a charge. And then this is the sound machine that we use in his room. I've shared this on YouTube before. This is the Hatch sound machine. So I will also link this one in the description box, but I love this one. It's amazing. It does so many different things. We basically just use it as a sound machine. Sometimes I'll use it as like a little like light if I need to go in there, but honestly, mostly just use it for sound. I do like that I can adjust it from my phone. So if I think that maybe the white noise like isn't loud enough, I can just turn it up from my phone and I don't actually need to go into his room. Tip number 4 is make sure you have a monitor so you can see your baby. It's really nerve-wracking. The first night, the first naps, the first 24 hours, the first few days is a little bit nerve-wracking, and it is really nice having a monitor that you can look at and see your baby. At least have a monitor where you can hear your baby, but seeing your baby just provides you so much more comfort, and it just allows you to know that they're okay. Tip number 5 is to make your last nap of the day a little bit earlier. So before we started sleep training Henrik, he was going to bed at basically whatever time. We were just following keeping his wake periods consistent throughout the day, and sometimes his last nap would be pretty late. And once we sleep trained him, we made sure that he had a decent chunk of time, usually like 2.5 to 3 hours of a wake period before he went to bed. That way, when we put him down to go to bed, he was actually tired. We were finding that on the nights where he was maybe only awake for like an hour and a half, or I don't remember exactly what the wake period window was at that time, because obviously it was 2 months ago and things have changed since then, but we found that if he was only awake for a short period of time, he definitely didn't go down as easy. So make sure that last nap of the day doesn't run too late or get too close to when you plan on putting your baby down. Tip number 6 is to keep your baby awake when you're feeding them. So I know this is difficult for a lot of mamas because a lot of times people will feed their baby to sleep, and I used to do the same. If I could get Henrik to fall asleep by giving him food, I would 100% do that because that was what was easy to do to get him down. Feeding him a bottle was a lot better than me having to like bounce and rock him for like half an hour or an hour. So I know a lot of times people kind of resort to doing this because it's the easier thing to do, but when you're sleep training a baby, you're basically teaching them how to self-soothe and how to teach themselves to fall asleep. So if you're giving them a bottle before bed and they're falling asleep, it is kind of defeating the purpose. So try to keep them awake while you're feeding that bottle. You can tickle their toes, talk to them, whatever you got to do to keep them awake. Keeping the room like well lit will absolutely help. Lots of different things that you can do, but just make sure that they don't fall asleep or doze off when you're feeding them. Tip number 7 is to create a nighttime routine. This has made such a big difference for us. It's nice to let Henrik know that, okay, it's time for bed. So our nighttime routine is nothing complex at all. We usually just play with him before bed, and then we will take him into our room. We'll give him a bath. After his bath is done, we will give him his bottle, read him a book, and then we will put him down. It's super simple, but we do the same thing every single night. We usually give ourselves like half an hour to 40 minutes to complete his full nighttime routine, but just having this routine in place, I feel like it kind of settles him down and lets him know that like, okay, nighttime's coming, it's time to go to bed. So tip number 8 is to continue using a sleep sack or a swaddle if you're using one of those. So Henrik was kind of in this weird time where we were pretty close to getting ready to transition him out of his swaddle because he was starting to show signs of rolling over, and I decided just during this week period where we were sleep training him that we would just keep him in his swaddle. He already had so many changes happening with just changing the way that we were putting him to sleep, so I decided to keep him in his swaddle. After that week was complete, we slowly started to transition him out of using a swaddle and putting him in a sleep sack. So this swaddle is good all the way up until 6 months. It was just kind of packed away in the closet, so it's all wrinkly. So I just wanted to show you a little bit closer, but I really like this sleep sack just because it has the nested bean on it. So this bean is weighted, so it just mimics like a parent's touch, and it just provides a little bit of weight on their chest, which I really like. So we use this while we were sleep training, or from 0 to 6 months, and even up until we were sleep training. Even when we started unswaddling his arms, we still continued to use this just so we could wrap up his body in a cocoon, and then we transitioned into the sleep sack. So we still currently use this sleep sack on the nights when it's a little bit cooler. He's now just starting to outgrow it. He's almost 7 months, so I am going to be getting the next size up just because we love nested bean so much. So honestly, nothing but great things to say about their products. I've been using them since Henrik was born, and I really love them. Tip number 9 is to let your partner put the baby down as well. So I think it's so important to make sure that your baby's comfortable with you as well as your significant other. So we made sure that like Chris and I were kind of alternating between nights and naps, making sure that he was really comfortable with both of us. Now either of us can put him down and there's no issue at all. So now I'm going to dive into how we did it and what worked well for us. So we decided to start with the night time. So we did his regular nighttime routine, and then we put him down for his first night. I decided to do it this way rather than starting with naps in the morning, just because I knew that the nights were going to be the most challenging time for me personally, but also for Henrik. So that's when I decided to kind of start off like my week of sleep training. So when I first brought him into his room, I turned on the sound machine, and different people have different approaches on this, but I do like to hold Henrik and rock him a little bit, and he was used to being rocked to sleep pretty well every single night. So I did like to rock him even just for like a minute in the beginning just to soothe him a little bit, but 1 minute of rocking was nothing compared to the half an hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half that we were doing before. So I would just rock him a little bit, just slowly, and sing to him or hum to him, and then I would just go ahead, give him a kiss, tell him I love him, put him down in his crib, and then I would leave the room and close the door and monitor him. So when it came to the times that I waited while we were sleep training him, I didn't follow a specific schedule. I know that there's a lot of like things out there that say you have to wait 10 minutes or you have to wait 20 minutes, or the first time you wait 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 7. I decided to just do what felt best for me. So when I first put Henrik in the room, I was like, I'm just going to wait and see how it goes. So I was planning to wait 10 minutes if I was able to, depending on how he was doing, before I would go in and check on him. So this first night, I just have my little notes on my computer right here. So this first night, we put him down to sleep at 8:30. So this was kind of around the same time that we were putting him down when he was 4 months old. We have now kind of moved that a little bit earlier just because it works best for us and it works best for Henrik. So we put him down at 8:30 for bedtime. So that first time I put him down, he cried for the full 10 minutes. That's what I felt comfortable waiting, but it wasn't like a hysterical cry. It was like he would cry and then he would catch his breath and then he would whimper a little bit and cry a little bit more and catch his breath and stop crying. He wasn't like hysterically crying. If he was hysterically crying, I probably would have handled the situation a little bit different, but he was actually like doing pretty good. I could tell that he was trying to soothe himself, and that made me feel a lot better about leaving him. So after 10 minutes, I went in and checked on him. I gave him a little rub on his belly, and then I went back out and closed the door. I did notice that when I went in that first time, he almost got more mad and seemed like more upset than if I wouldn't had gone in at all, which made me be like, okay, maybe I need to rethink going in and give him a little bit more time. So I could tell that after I left the room, he was kind of doing the same thing that he was doing before, and then progressively he started to kind of soothe himself for longer periods of time. So since he was kind of soothing himself, I wasn't as concerned about going in like after another 10 minutes, so I decided to wait it out. I ended up waiting for 20 minutes, and then the little man fell asleep. I was so happy. I was thinking that he was going to be crying for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, but he ended up falling asleep after half an hour and me only going and checking in on him once. He did wake up around 9:45, which was a pretty usual time for him to wake up, and he was kind of just awake, kind of crying a little bit, whimpering a bit, and then he fell back asleep after 10 minutes. I didn't go into his room at all. I just watched him on the monitor and he was good, and I was so happy. And at that point I felt pretty hopeful that like, okay, he is learning how to self-soothe. So the next time he woke up was at 4:30. Now, previous to sleep training him, I was giving him 2 bottles throughout the night. So I didn't feel fully comfortable with just kind of cutting out like both of his bottles and going to nothing. I wanted to slowly wean him off his bottles. So when he woke up at 4:30, I fed him. I made sure he was awake during his entire feed, so the bottle wasn't putting him back to sleep, because again, I wanted him to put himself to sleep. So I fed him his bottle, put him back in his bassinet, and then he fell asleep like right away. At 6 a.m. he woke up again. He cried for literally 2 minutes, maybe only cried, like let out 3 little cries, and then fell back asleep again until 8:20 is when he woke up for the day. So that's how our first night went. Again, I thought that the night went pretty well considering what I was doing previous. I was waking up every single time he was crying, pulling him out of his bassinet, rocking him, soothing him, feeding him. It was a lot. So I was happy that I could tell that there was a little bit of hope that maybe he was going to be successful with sleep training. But if your baby isn't successful that first night and it doesn't go as planned, don't give up, don't worry. Maybe your baby just needs a little bit more time. So I'll just explain to you how the rest of his naps went throughout that day, just so you kind of have a better idea of what that looked like. So his first nap, he went down at 9:45 and he cried for a little bit, and after 5 minutes he was asleep. He ended up waking up around 10:30, so he slept for about 40 minutes. Second nap, we put him down at 12:05. He fell asleep after 2 minutes. So we were making sure that he was pretty tired when we were putting him down, in hopes of him not like fussing and crying for a really long time. So he was asleep after 2 minutes and he woke up again at 12:50. After that, we put him down for nap 3 at 2:15, and he went right to sleep, and this nap ended up being a little bit longer, so he woke up at 3:10 for this nap. I believe at this time we were doing 4 to 5 naps a day. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was more dependent on his wake periods, but for this day, it looked like we did 4 naps. So I put him in it, or we put him in his crib at 4:30. He fussed, but didn't cry like at all during this time, and he was asleep by 4:40, so 10 minutes later, and he woke up at 5:20. So that was how our first entire day went. Now I want to dive into night 2 just to kind of explain to you how that night went for us. So for night 2, it honestly went even better. We put Henrik down at 8:15 and then he was asleep. 5 minutes later, he woke up at 4:45. We fed him a bottle, and then 5 minutes after we gave him that bottle, like we had put him in his bassinet, he cried for about 5 minutes and then fell back asleep. And on that night, he woke up at 8:30. So he didn't even wake up like any other times during the night, which was an improvement from the night before. And I won't go into the details on night 3. I did like write it down here, but it looked really similar to night 3. He went asleep, he woke up for a bottle, and then he woke up for the day. So he wasn't waking up multiple times throughout the night, which was nice. I was just waking up to feed him. So for the first week of sleep training, I had him on that 1 bottle per night, but because he was eating so much food throughout the day, he was a really healthy weight, he was hitting all of his milestones. So after the week of sleep training and I decided I was going to take away that bottle, he woke up and I just never brought in a bottle for him, and he just soothed himself right back to sleep. So weaning him off of that extra bottle every night was actually really easy to do, and it went a lot better than I thought it was going to. So one thing I do want to note is that Henrik did use soothers before we sleep trained him, so a lot of times throughout the night I was just popping back in his soother to get him to sleep. When we started sleep training him, I actually just completely took the soother away for all naps and bedtime, and I think that that really helps because so many times his soother would fall out of his mouth and then he'd wake up and he would look for that soother to kind of soothe him back to sleep. And so once he got familiar with not having that soother, I think it really just helped him like fall asleep so much easier. Now, I'm not like 100% sure on that. That's just like my own thoughts, but we did take away his soothers completely for naps and sleep time, and I really do think that it helped. I think if your baby's at an age where they can put the soother back in their mouths and they can find it in the crib, pop it in their mouth, then that obviously changes things quite a bit. But Henrik was too little to do that, so I thought taking away his soother would just be best. Now, emotionally, the first night was definitely the most challenging. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, I've tried this already for a night, or I'm really nervous to do it my first night, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard watching your baby cry, knowing that you can go in and soothe them and help them. But if you want to sleep better and you want to sleep through the nights, just remind yourself that this is best for you, your family, and the baby. And I promise you, it gets easier. Even by night 2, I felt so much better than I did on night 1. And as the week progressed, I felt even better. Now when Henrik cries, and he's in bed, I know he's okay. I know he can soothe himself back to sleep. And he does have a cry that's like a little bit more hysterical, where I know that if he's crying and he needs something, it's a different cry than when he's trying to put himself to sleep. I just want to encourage you to not give up. If your first 2 nights don't go as planned, or your first night goes completely sideways, give it a try again. This is like so new to you and your baby, and I really do believe that if you give it some time, things will get better. And you might have to try out a few different sleep training methods. Maybe trying out a different technique will work best for your baby. Every baby is so different and so unique. So I think it's important to find something that you feel comfortable with, but obviously something that works well with your baby as well. So I hope you found this helpful. Again, this is just my own experience. I'm not telling you that this is what you should do. I'm just sharing what worked for us and our family. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, go ahead, comment them down below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. It really just helps support me and my channel, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I will see you in the next video. Bye!